Hello, fellow classmates. Today I'm here to talk about my book, which was The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. I'll start off by talking about the author a little bit. Margaret Atwood was a Canadian poet, writer, and environmental activist. She was awarded the Arthur C. Clarke Award in 1987 for this book here, The Handmaid's Tale. She was inducted into the Canadian Hall of Fame, Walk of Fame in 2001. She's also a founder of the Writers' Trust of Canada, which is a nonprofit organization that promotes Canadian authors and writing in Canada, basically to help the community. Margaret didn't go to school until she was 8 years old, and after that she became an avid reader and just incredibly interested in literature. At 16, she realized she wanted to write as a career, and she studied at the Victoria College in the University of Toronto, where she got published in the literary magazine there in 1957. Oh yeah, by the way, she was born on November 18th, 1939. That's kind of important, right? Her birthday? Right out of college, her first book of poetry was published called Double Persephone, and that first book of poetry won the E.J. Pratt Medal. So it's pretty obvious that she was pretty successful right out of the bat, right out of college. Now let's talk a little bit about the plot of the book. And I'll also talk about the characters interspersed with this plot, kind of just to save time, you know? So we have our main character, Offred, who is a handmaid in the Republic of Galad, and she is basically what a handmaid is. Let's describe a handmaid first. She is a woman who has no rights. She is basically an empty shell without opinion. She can't talk to people. She can talk to people, but she can only talk to them if she's talked to first. So if she has a discussion or a conversation with someone, she can only say certain things. Like, she has this predetermined list of things she's allowed to say to certain higher-ups, certain elites of the country. She can't even look people directly in the eye. She has to talk to them kind of like this and explain to people what they're talking to her, and she can't look at them at all. She's taken in by the commander, who is the head honcho of the household, and he has a wife who is named Serena Joy, and she is a former gospel singer and activist, I believe. Only she believes in the traditional society. She believes in the traditional way of, like, women succeeding men, and, you know, men are the patriarchs of the house, that sort of thing. The plot revolves around this household, and a handmaid has to procreate with the leader of the house, the commander, once every month. And while he does this, basically rapes her, his wife will hold her down and watch this happen. The people in this society have absolutely no freedom at all. Or at least the handmaids, rather. They have no freedom. They are completely submissive to the totalitarian government. Throughout the story, Offred slips into flashback where she talks about her ex-husband and her daughter. She was once married to a man named Luke, who basically she eloped with. It was an affair that she had, or I believe he was married, and she cheated on him, or whatever. They cheated together. And they had a baby, and then when the uprising happened, the people took over the country, and they got separated. After this, she was sent to the Red Center, which is a place where handmaids are turned into handmaids. That's where they are rehabilitated, and that's where she spends the remainder of the beginning of the story, at least. This takeover affected the women's rights and totally stripped them of all their rights. The only women that would actually have rights are the wives of the officers, I suppose, in some sense, but not really. They just kind of completely submiss to their husbands, so in a way they don't even have rights of their own. She then meets another handmaid called Ojen, who is a woman that wants to get out of this totalitarian society. She wants to rebel and revolt. She plans a thing called May Day, which is a revolt against the totalitarian government, and she wants Offred to join her in this uprising. And the last major character that I want to talk about is a man named Nick, who is a gardener that works for the officer, and he basically kind of falls in love with Offred. He starts teaching her how to read, they play Scrabble together, and she starts to kind of fall for him a little bit. And that's basically all I'm going to tell you about the plot without spoiling the ending, so that's all I'm going to say. Now I'm going to talk about some of the historical significance and why Margaret Atwood might have wanted to write this story. Now the story takes place in the U.S. The U.S. is what Gilead is. Gilead, I don't even know how to pronounce it, so I'm sorry if I pronounced it wrong. And it's said that Canada is the only place for salvation. That's sort of where the characters want to go. They all want to go to Canada and escape this totalitarian government. In the year the novel was written, there was this debate over the free trade between Canada and the US, and this was kind of a response to that from Margaret Atwood. She's a Canadian author, as I said before, so this is her response to the conflict between Canada and the US, which is still alive today. There's still a lot of conflict. I hear it at work all the time. Some of my coworkers don't like Canadians very much, and my brother's Canadian, so I'm kind of a little bit like, I don't want to talk to you, you know, that sort of thing. Margaret Atwood is also a Red Tory, and that's like a conservative party in Canada. She is a historical Red Tory, and I'm going to basically explain what that is. They respect the traditional values of old. They also have a devolution of power from central government to local communities. They want the local communities to have more power, and they also promote charities for like poverty and a lot based on the community and all the problems that surrounds it. And you can definitely see that mood in the novel as well, because everyone is so scared and just totally inside themselves. They just kind of recede inside of themselves, kind of like you would if you were homeless or just totally dominated by this horrible country that you live in, or at least the horribleness in this sense. Now I'm going to discuss a couple of the major themes in the novel. Obviously, women and the betrayal of their bodies is a huge theme. The rape and procreation of women is really, really hard to read about. It is one of the major plot points of the book. It basically carries the whole book. Women are seen as a set of ovaries and a womb. That's all they are. They have no opinion, no say in anything, and they're basically subhuman. As I've said, rape is a big, huge motif, and sexual violence against women as well. The society says that they suppress sexual violence, but in actuality, they kind of like monopolize on it. They create this. There's this place in the book called Jezebel's, which is a bar or a club that basically sells prostitutes, and of course they sell them to the male elites because that's where all of this, oppression is happening. And I'm actually wearing one of the symbols. Red represents sexual fertility, and this is like what the characters have to wear. These are the Handmaid's dresses. They have to wear things that cover up their neck and their whole skin. Any skin cannot be shown, and they wear these like hats that cover most of their head. The Eyes of God is also a very huge motif in the novel. They're basically the police force of the book. And a little bit about the time period, there's social criticism on the trade between the US and Canada. I already kind of mentioned that earlier. That's kind of why why the novel was actually written, I believe anyway. She wrote also essays about this too, but this is kind of like her big kind of breakthrough novel. And it basically discusses how like the countries are becoming divided, even though we live in North America, and yet Canada and the US are kind of completely opposites, even though we have our similarities as well. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about how it was received. It won numerous awards. Actually, it won 2, but it was nominated for many others. It won the 1985 Governor's General Award and the first Arthur C. Clarke Award in 1987. It was also nominated for the 1986 Booker Award, the 1986 Booker Prize, and the 1987 Prometheus Award. It has been banned and challenged in eight times in various libraries and bookstores around the U.S. It was originally published as basically Margaret Atwood. That was her full name, and she also wrote the book as the title was a reference to the Canterbury Tales. This tale is the Handmaid's Tale, much like the Pardoner's Tale and all of the other tales in the Canterbury Tales. Now I'll talk about a couple of the articles that I read about this novel. One was written by Gormand Beauchamp of Midwest Quarterly. This explores the social aspects of the dystopia of the novel. It also reflects on the possibility of an overthrow of the U.S. By a totalitarian government, and the social change based on religious fundamentalism, culture wars, and environmental pollution. That's also something I forgot to mention. The author is a major environmental activist and nature writer. She goes on little nature trips a lot. I believe she would write outside of her house in nature. My basic thoughts on this article is that I believe it's possible that this could happen. I mean, this is the reason that we write these books, is because of how the government is changing and how people are changing. And I mean, change is good in some sense, but sometimes it gets a little too crazy. The second article I read was by Pamela Cooper, and it was in the Journal of Popular Culture. This article actually discusses the film of this tale, and even though it's the film, it still has a lot of the major themes, so I was really interested in reading this. It discusses the use of sexuality in the film, and the relationship between the doctor and the patient sort of thing, like how a doctor will tell you what to do, and just that sort of type thing, because the doctor's always right, but sometimes they're not, actually. And it also talks about a major motif in the novel, which is the eyes, who are, as I said before, the police force of the novel. And this police force is incredibly violent. They are completely, totally power crazy. They hurt people for their own gain. And this is a really huge criticism on the police force of today. My dad and I were actually talking a couple days ago about this, and how a lot of the police they abuse their power. I can't remember exactly the source of this. I didn't actually watch the news article about it, but I heard from my dad that there was a police officer that had so there was one guy who was on parole for something. He had just finished paying child support for his kid, and he didn't want to go back to prison. For some reason he got arrested, or he was about to get arrested by this cop. I don't know exactly what reason. It might have been a traffic ticket or something, but he almost gets handcuffed, but he gets away from the police officer. He, jerks away and starts running away. The police officer watches him and pulls out his gun and shoots him multiple times in the back, killing him. He then walks up to him and handcuffs him. Handcuffs his lifeless body. That is a reason why the eyes are so important in this novel, because a lot of times the police will just do whatever they want. I'm not trying to criticize the entire police force, because there's obviously exceptions to this. There's not every single police officer is bad, but there are a few that just really it baffle me. And it's also kind of the dominance of the male police officer versus the female police officer, and how the police officer will totally dominate the female one and say things that she's doing wrong, even though she's not doing something wrong. And it's a really, really interesting concept, and that was the thing that I found most interesting about this article, because it's still happening today. It's 2015. This novel was written in 1985. What is that? 30 years now. I was thinking of 95. 30 years, and it's still going on. That is insane to me. And that is definitely a reason why you should read The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. It is an incredible novel. This took me forever to read, because it's so detailed and so every sentence is gold. It's such beauty. It's masterly written, and you just have to read it. It's so incredible and thought-provoking. I can't stop talking about this novel. So, pick it up wherever books are sold, right? I mean, it's pretty cool, and I would love to discuss this with you. If you've read this novel, I'd love to have a discussion, because it's just insane, all of the topics that it discusses about sexuality and the totalitarian government and the police force, and there's so much to discuss, and it's just a really, really intriguing novel. So I want to thank you all for watching this video. Thanks for sticking with me, and I will see you. Oh my gosh, I was about to do my sign-off for a YouTube video. I'm on YouTube, so this is something I'm used to. But anyway, yeah, hope you all enjoyed this. Talk to you guys later, and we're almost done. It's almost over. We only have a week and a half left, so cool, yay, awesome. Read The Handmaid's Tale, and I will see you guys some other time.